Hey, folks. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope you had a lovely weekend. I did. It was packed. It was really packed, but it was good. Dark wheat beer. You can keep that one for yourself, Gozer, I think. Hello, everybody. Molly, Ms. Wicked Wolf. Hey, Carolyn. Homebody. Angus. Hey, Meg. Good to see you. Hades, Mr. Nameless. The Goji, Ed. Jason. Ikari Kid. Boy, we got a nice talkative group here today. Jackson, 255 AD. Adult Swim announced they plan to recast Rick and Morty. Chance and how that working. Roiland's performance is a massive part of those characters. Some episodes are just him riffing put to animation. So, setting aside my own feelings about Rick and Morty, which is that I've never liked it, and actually that dialogue style, that improvisational dialogue style is a huge part of why I never liked it. But the idea of recasting it seems very foolish. Even if you could get people who could recreate the voice, the sound of it, given that so much of what it was built around was just him, doing whatever he felt like. This light's a little bright. There we go. And them sort of sorting out what that was going to look like later. It's not just a matter of the voices. That was part of his creative input into the whole thing. I can't imagine it's going to work very well at all. Ugh. You wake up in the last TV show you watched. This is your life now. Where are you? What was the last thing I watched? I think it was Doctor Who. So I guess I'll be okay. Thank you, Phantom Angel of Music. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm guessing Adult Swim shows have never really been my thing. As far as their original productions go, by and large, not really. Like, I enjoyed here's the thing. When I liked them, it was usually in the very small doses that they were offered it. So, like, I did like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but the episodes were only like 15 minutes long back when I was watching it. So, like, that was about as much as I could handle, and more than that, like, I tried to watch the movie. Good grief. But yeah, the way a lot of their original productions went over time and the more surrealistic bent, like, I very much appreciate what Adult Swim did with its original productions. But yeah, most of them weren't to my taste. Despite knowing a lot of people like them. Despite being actually longtime friends with someone who worked on one of the dang things. But, How was the Burlesque Festival? It was good. It was exhausting. I was a stage kitten for 2 shows, back-to-back nights. And so the first night, I had sort of a cutoff flannel. It was, kind of Vermonty, pseudo lumberjack-esque kind of look. And my intention was to wear, just some, big stompy, brown boots that I had, just sort of stomp around the wood kind of boots. The problem was they were too big to fit in my bag. So I had them set by the door, intending to grab them on my way out. I wasn't going to wear them to the show because of the weather, they were going to get dirty and slushy and snowy, and then they would have caused damage. That would have messed up the stage. I would have had to clean them, so that's why I didn't do that. But I forgot to grab them on the way out. That didn't mean I was without shoe options, but it meant I wore heels for 2 nights in a row when it was my intention to only wear them for 1 night. And my feet are not happy with me at all. At all. Would I be the doctor or companion in my family? I tend to think of myself more as wanting to be the Doctor in general. I'll admit to that. Started a friend on Who with the 11th hour. Even I'm surprised how well that and The Beast Below work as a thesis statement and style flex right out of the gate. Yeah, no, Series 5 was actually a very good jumping on point. Adult Swim, home movies and Space Ghosts. The end. That works, Meg. Most of today's conversations will be in relation to the Oscar nominations. Oh, I keep forgetting those are out, and I looked at them. I looked at the nominees, and I still keep forgetting that they came out. There were 2 major omissions that I would have liked to have seen. I really would have liked to have seen a nomination for Keke Palmer for Nope, and I really would have liked to have seen a nomination for Janelle Monáe for Glass Onion. That having been said, the latter one's not, well, neither is that surprising. The former's in a horror movie, which the Oscars tend to overlook, and the latter is in a franchise that the Oscars already did dirty to its lead character, who wasn't played by Daniel Craig, because last time they snubbed Ana de Armas. So, I guess I shouldn't have been too shocked by that. I was pleasantly surprised at how well-rounded the nominations for things like Everything Everywhere All at Once were. Like, they didn't snub Stephanie Sue and only nominate Jamie Lee Curtis. Granted, only one person can win, so depending on how that goes, maybe that'll be different. But that was nice to see. I would have liked to have seen some more nominations for RRR. It did at least get the nomination for Best Song, which, God dang it, it really needed to have. And Angela Bassett being nominated for Black Panther was one of those things that I'm like, this is a nomination that should happen and won't. But it did, and I'm really glad because she killed it in that movie. She absolutely killed it. Did I watch Velma? No. Good grief, no. Nothing about that looked appealing to me at all. It looked like it was made by people who didn't seem to actually like Scooby-Doo, and most of the reviews I've watched or read since then kind of bear out that instinctual gut feeling I had. So, no. That's on the I'll only watch it if someone pays me pile. Sorry, my nose, that just... let's see. My big early prediction for the Oscar ceremony, that performance of Naatu Naatu is going to shut the show down. It should. If they better perform it too, because they've been iffy about actually performing the songs lately. Like, if you're gonna nominate that song, you better make a freaking production about it. My goodness. Any thoughts on Velma? I kind of agree with anyone that's not very good. I mean, other than just what I saw in trailers told me that I probably wasn't going to like it, and I avoided it. I don't really have any thoughts beyond that. Is the Beast Below just the ones who walk away from a Mela drawn out? I'm not sure because I'm not familiar with what you're referencing there. Let's see. Oh, John Vinyls, thank you very much for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. Tumblr culture is complaining endlessly about the Disney corporate culture while celebrating the work of its artists, employees, and their creative works. Disney is difficult. And this is kind of coming up as I continue to hammer on the issues with, supporting things like Hogwarts Legacy. So Disney is an awkward one to talk about because it is, first of all, blanket statement. It is too big a company. It should not be as big as it is. It should never have been allowed to be as big as it became. It should be broken up take that as a given. All right, let's start with that. I feel like there's a tendency by people, especially by anti-woke folks, to particularly hammer on Disney because Disney is trying to appeal to a more politically conscious audience. And in addition to the fact that Disney is not the worst on those things overall. So here's the thing. I often find myself, when I talk about other similar corporate entities, like, say, Warner Brothers Discovery, much to my own chagrin, I have to end up praising Disney, if only by comparison. Not in a vacuum. In a vacuum, Disney, especially if you want to take a full scope at, their decades, like 100 years worth of existence, a lot to criticize. But at the same time, like, I frequently have to point to them as like, okay, they do handle this crap better most of the time. And I hate that. I hate having to do that. And there's both a validity and a difficulty in criticizing a corporate culture while celebrating the artistic works, because they are often, not always, but often somewhat detached from each other. The corporate culture doesn't really care about the art other than, is it making us money? And the artists, unless the corporate culture is directly encroaching on them, doesn't have to think about them too much. Now, that does still happen. We saw things that came out, when things got more scrutinized with the Don't Say Gay bill, and then a number of people working for Disney-owned corporations talked about how they wanted to include things like more queer representation and were specifically barred from doing so by Disney higher-ups. So, like, that's where it crosses over. But I do understand the impulse to want to protect the artistic minds even as you rail against the corporate ones. And I get that instinct. Sometimes it is more viable a thing to do than others. Sometimes it's really not worth trying to separate them. Other times there are clearer distinctions. It's messy, is the simple reality. Like, all of this is freaking messy. Absolutely no corporation is above reproach. Disney especially. And if you want to get into all the things of, or even just me, I talk about Marvel, and not lately, but I have historically praised a fair amount of Marvel, a fair amount of Disney animated stuff, and all that. But at the same time, if you were to tell me I'd have less of that in my life, but we will break up the Disney Corporation, I'd take that trade in a frickin' heartbeat. Happily. I will not defend that company. But I do still support it in, unfortunately, financial ways. Now, I'll still make my arguments about things like Hogwarts Legacy, because the thing is, people try and compare that to Disney, and they're not comparable, because Hogwarts Legacy has a direct money funnel to J.K. Rowling, who is using her wealth to make trans people's lives as difficult and miserable as humanly possible, and to help codify that into law. Like, that's a very straight line scenario. Disney, there's a lot more to untangle. Does it mean it's not worth untangling? No, it probably is, but it's messier. It's just so much messier. I hate capitalism. Global capitalism is all of that writ large. Anyways, do I watch Bluey? I've seen clips of Bluey that I've enjoyed. I have not watched the show proper. Is there a name for the archetype about a wimpy character becoming a monster? E.g. Jason from Far Cry, The Seventh Doctor, Walter White, Wesley from Angel? Probably. I would think... Well, first of all, I don't think the Seventh Doctor fits your criteria, because he's a bit more of a case of we realized how Machiavellian he'd always been, and that became clearer. But as far as the rest go, it's kind of it's a version of corrupted by power. It's not that straightforward, though. There probably is, it probably is named something more specific, but I don't know what it is. The ones who walk away from Amelis is about a city where life is perfect because they torture a child. Yeah. In that case, the Beast Below is definitely the same core idea, certainly. Strange New Worlds did an Amelis episode last year. They did, and I actually immediately thought of that, and actually the image of that popped into my dang head. Yeah, they did. Let's see. Have you heard Roger Craig Smith as Batman? I think he's a great man to take up the cape and cowl look. He's working on Arkham Origins. I am not familiar with this person, and I don't think that I have. Given at this point how bad my motion sickness has gotten, I've kind of given up on the idea that I'm going to be able to get into the Arkham games, and so it's hard for me to care. Oh well. I'm at least happy that Diane Warren got an honorary Oscar at the Governor's Award, so I don't feel too bad for her getting nominated and not winning for a 14th time. Oh, well, that's good. 255 AD. Thank you very much for the super chat. I've seen Avatar 2 now. There's this Na'vi tribe that are coded Polynesian. Some of them are played by white actors. Does that count as blackface? So, before I say anything, opinion of a white person should never supersede the opinion of any people of color, especially anyone from the Polynesian regions or the places they're being coded from. So, no matter what I say, low priority opinion. Let's establish that. My own personal call on that would be no, but not in like a it's all good situation, more in a I think in a case like that, it would be enough to address the coding and how well or fairly or stereotypically that was or wasn't done. To me at least, it feels like a bit of an overstep because part of the reason to code characters, and you can have an argument over racial coding is a good idea or not. We can have a whole separate conversation about that. But part of the reason coding exists is so that you can draw on the notions of a thing without having to literally recreate that thing. So if you've already created something that is coded as something, but like they're already, they're blue. They're what? They're 8 foot tall and blue. So getting into a blackface argument on that, again, if somebody actually from that culture wanted to make that argument, I would not stand in their way. But to me, that feels like splitting hairs where there's probably more than enough to pull apart with just talking about how good or bad the coding in and of itself is, if that makes sense. There are rabbit tracks in my area. Oh, that's nice. It's mostly squirrel tracks in the snow around here. The Exorcist is 50? Mind blown. I have seen The Exorcist. It's fine. Like, I get why it was kind of a big deal, especially in horror at the time. But it's one of those movies that, like, I can't. By the time I saw it, I was an adult. I'd seen stuff that had taken influence from it. It seemed dated to me. It seemed well done. It just, and it's not impossible for me to really get hit hard by movies of that age or anything close to it, like the 1976, I think, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I still think is the scariest movie of all time. And that thing's older than I am. So it's not impossible for horror from that time to hit me quite hard. That one never quite did, though. I think maybe it's also because I wasn't raised in any religion. Like, most of the people I know who are like, oh, it terrified me, either were Catholic or were ex-Catholics or were in some way more inherently religious than I am or was or ever probably will be. So, you know, I suspect that there's a bit of that impacting how hard it hit other people. Honestly, after Mulan, I've given up on Disney. I'm assuming you mean the live-action remake, because the original's pretty good. I watched Jesse's video on Avatar, The Way of Water. I saw that it was up. I haven't seen it. I have not seen that movie yet. I don't know if I'm going to get to it while it's still in theaters. We'll see. we shall see. I didn't skip a super chat, 255 AD. I was trying to catch up to it. So give me a minute and I will get there. Personal question, making my own comic. Any advice for someone who's not sure if I'm doing it right? The only way to know if you're doing it right is to get it done and get the opinions of people you trust. I think it's important for most creators, especially anything you have to sink a lot of time into, to have people that you can trust their opinions on. So, like, I have with my videos, I have somebody very trusted who I will have take a look at my videos before they go live to try and catch things that I might have missed. If I have a video that's like on a more sensitive topic that I'm kind of stepping out of my lane, I might run it by a couple of people with relevant knowledge. When my novel was first done, I sought multiple people whose opinions I trusted, their views on what I had done. Like, just do what you're trying to do. Get the opinions of people who you trust and who you're willing to listen to. And if they are able to be honest with you, take whatever they say on board and decide on the best way to move forward. Supremo Mega! Thank you for the super chat. As much as fans praise Batman the animated series, it seems like both Deanie and Tim have apathy for the late 80s/90s post-crisis stuff. Not a fan of their take on Bane. Their Bane was okay. It wasn't great, but considering they weren't going to do the storyline that he was designed to facilitate, it probably was never going to be an amazing take. And yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. You know, they had somewhat old school sensibilities. I mean, the art design for that thing was reminiscent of the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons, for crying out loud. So, like, yeah, I would agree with that. So, I mean, I guess whether or not that impacts your viewing depends on how highly you personally hold the 80s and 90s post-crisis Batman from the comics, which, Idea for a regeneration story. The Doctor falls in with some human supremacists and their fight against aliens, only to realize they've been subconsciously sabotaging it because Doctor. It would be... I I personally would kind of like the Doctor's opinion of humans to get taken down a peg or two every now and then. Just, I get tired of science fiction where like an alien or a higher being, or which the Doctor is kind of both, like praises, oh, humans are so amazing. No, we're not. We're crap. We are absolute garbage. Oh, well. 255 AD. Not that super chat. John Vinyls is before mine. No, I talked about that. That led me down a rather extended thing talking about corporate culture and Disney and comparing Disney to other things and how I wish I didn't have to praise Disney, but a lot of other companies are so much worse. No, that set me on a whole spiral. I did that one. In my opinion, Seven becomes more manipulative in preparation to fight Fenric. The changes start when he meets Ace. He said he recognized Fenric's hand in it from the beginning. I mean, sure, but I don't like Curse of Fenric that much, so while I won't dispute that reading, I don't favor it. Am I saying it's the Friends of Horror? Yeah, sure, why not? The grassroots campaign to get Andrea Riseborough an Oscar nomination worked, but at the expense of both Danielle Deadweiler and Viola Davis. Till is absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know a lot about that one, so I don't personally have an opinion there. Let's see. Where did I leave off? Do I have sympathy for child stars? Yeah, to a degree. I don't doubt that a lot of them probably would have chosen to stop what they were doing given the option, given like a true proper choice. Am I planning to attend Gallifrey 1 this year? No, I'm too broke. And I would have had to have gotten my ticket months ago. Yeah, no, I can't. I can't afford it. Let's see. Will there be any more episode of Liz Breaks Vera's Brain? Maybe. All right. I suppose this is about as good a time as I need to mention it because it's been a little while now. Liz and I are not seeing each other as partners any longer. It's one of those things where it's just it's private, but at the same time, the fact that we were together was public knowledge. So it was gonna come up eventually, and at this point it's been some months, and probably about time to cross the bridge on that. Yeah. Now that having been said, we're not ruling out the possibility of her breaking me with more Riverdale. She has said, even in the not so distant past, that she'd still like to break me with some of the superhero stuff that goes on. Good grief. So that may still happen, but I think there is no guarantee, and no one should have expectations of Liz appearing on either this channel or the Break Room of Geeks going forward. Again, not impossible, but obviously circumstances have changed. You didn't do the hard thing. I'm not sure which one I didn't do it to 255. If it was to you, 255 AD, then I apologize, and here it is. If it was to John, here's another one. If it was to Supreme Omega, here you go again. And also for your new super chat that you just got in. Also on Batman the Animated Series, do you feel the whole Bruce Barbara ship was weird? Yes! Yes, it was always weird. It was weird in freaking, what was it? Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, which is where I'm pretty sure it first got floated as a thing. It was weird immediately. It was weird and creepy, and I don't know why Bruce Timm wouldn't let it go. Nobody but him liked it. Ah. Ugh. Not good. Terry Pratchett had humans sussed when he wrote about the fallen angel meets the rising ape. Yeah, kind of. All right, let me see here. So that's why you've gone off on 10. Stop banging on how much you love humans, you idiot. We suck. It's a contributing factor, sure. As a fan of DC Comics and Steven Universe, I would love to see a crossover between the Crystal Gems and the Green Lanterns. Like, imagine the interactions between someone like Guy Gardner. Oh, God, he would get his butt kicked, and it would be great. Where did you get your She-They pin, and do they have a He-They version? This came from an Etsy store. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. This was actually a gift from Carolyn, who's in the chat. And I believe they do. I believe I looked at that at another point later because somebody else had asked a little while back. And assuming the store is still up, last time I looked at it, they did have He-They. They had the full range pretty much. Let's see. What did you think of the DC Ruby crossover? It was a weird one. I didn't even know that it happened. So, no opinion. Sending you much love. Yeah, I appreciate that, folks. It's just things go in different directions. We move forward. If it helps, there's other explanations for Seven's arc. Big Finish implied he was aware of the Time War. In the books, he's scared of becoming the Valyard. Interesting takes. Do I have rabbits in the area? Oh, you mean like wild? Oh yeah. Yeah. I've seen some every now and then. Honestly, you're more likely to see a skunk though. So, there's that. The biggest oh my gosh. The biggest Oscar upset for me this year is Brett Morgan's Bowie collage, Moon Age Daydream, not getting into the final 5 documentary nominations. I didn't see that one. Trailer did look good, though. I'm slogging through Plato's dialogues. Why? What? Was that like for a class or something, homebody? Why? Why would you do that? Let's see here. Is the live in 2 different places? Seems to be reading out chats I can't see here. Well, I'm looking at the live chat. If you only have top chat, which I can't figure out how the hell it decides what it's going to show, you're getting a curated list, curated by a metric I don't understand. Oh, she's just further back than I'm expecting. Yeah, like I'm rarely caught up. So there you go. Ironically, it's the year of the rabbit. I would say fittingly it's the year of the rabbit. That is not particularly ironic. Sorry. I can be a pedant over misapplication of the term irony. Hey, Jesse. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Skunk or black cat with painted white stripe. Oh no. We get legit skunks around here. A fair bit. I'm currently watching The Web Planet due to another YouTuber I follow saying it's their favorite First Doctor story. It's certainly ambitious for its time, I'll say that. I have not seen that one yet. It will be interesting when I do. Really struggling with my HRT regimen on pills. What do you think of the patches considering switching? I mean, the patch, obviously, it's I still have to set an alert on my phone to remind myself to change it once a week. But, it's not something that I have to remember every day. It's just there. It has its little annoyances. Depending on how sensitive your skin is, it can leave a little ring like for a while. Like I mean, you shouldn't anyway, but you can't apply it to the same place over and over again. So like you move it a little over to the side, or you put it on your backside as opposed to your lower stomach, which is the other place where it's good for. And you just notice this little collection of fading red rings from having had it. I don't mind. So as long as you don't have super sensitive skin, yeah, no, they're not too bad. They can be a little bit irritating if they start to peel in the corner, especially like if you're showering, or something like that. But I do find that just put on something snug over them to just hold them in place for a while. They'll re-stick. They'll re-adhere. So yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, the main reason I started on the patch was twofold. You tend to get results a little bit faster than on the pill. Not as fast as injections, but a little bit faster than on the pill. And it's slightly lower instances of blood clots. Not hugely, but like a little bit lower instance of that. I just like esoteric philosophy. I also enjoyed so I can't read that. Something about Buddhism. Cool. I will never appropriately pronounce that. So, yeah. Excuse me. Dusty Smith's entire YouTube channel has been deleted. I don't know if I know Dusty Smith. It's usually a bad day anytime anyone's channel gets fully deleted. As a general rule, I think I'm an ox. We got rats. I'm a cock. Good to know, Meg. I'm a dog, for the record. If we're talking Chinese year zodiacs, yes, I'm a dog. Woof. Have you seen any controversial queer material? High Guardian Spice, Q-Force, the webcomic boyfriend. I mean, I have a real bad gauge on what is or isn't controversial anymore. Like, especially at this point, you can look at the video I did on book challenges and bannings that like just being visibly queer at all has become controversial. So I wouldn't even know how to grade on that. I haven't taken in any of the things you listed. So I'm going to hazard a guess to say no. I mean, most material, I support the existence of confrontational queer material, stuff that is very in your face with being queer. I, however, don't enjoy most of it, as someone partaking of the art. I tend to like queer theming integrated into a story that still works if the metaphor wasn't there, or if the coding wasn't there, or if those specific themes were something else. The core narrative would still interest me. It's kind of the same approach I take to comedy. I don't tend to like comedies that are just trying to make you laugh. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but I have a very, very strong preference for comedies that are telling a story that I would happily follow even if it wasn't funny, and then it's funny on top of that. I kind of feel the same way with queer material. I would like a story that seems interesting and engaging to me in and of itself, and then has queerness as like just a way for me to enjoy it even more. So, yeah, that's sort of my roundabout way of answering that. John, vinyls. Oh, because I brought up irony. It's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride. Here's the thing. Here's the layers to that. Not a single example that Alanis Morissette gives in the song Ironic is actually an example of irony. And that fact is ironic. Ha ha! There you go. Let's see. Where did I leave off? At least they nominated Armis this year. Yeah, for Blonde. That's also on the list of I'll only watch it if somebody pays me. Good grief. Going back to Steven Universe meets Green Lantern, I can see Steven looking at Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart as the adults in the room, whereas Kyle and Guy are brothers, if that makes sense. Yeah, kind of. I feel like, actually, I feel like Guy might oddly bond with Amethyst. They're both kind of terrible people. Well. Do I like the 15th Doctor's pink beanie? I'm sorry, is what now? What? I feel like I missed something while I was away. What? All right, I'm not seeing what you're talking about here. Nope, I think you're yanking my chain. That's what I think you're doing. My opinion on Sword in the Stone, it's good. I haven't rewatched it in a long time, but it's good. It's fun. It's very episodic. It's a movie that certainly wouldn't be made in the way it exists now. But I enjoy it. That's a fun one. Soteriology. Okay. Getting you to say Breck properly, which I probably just messed up now. Q-Force has a character unironically named Twink. That's how bad the show was. Yeah. I kind of hate that. I kind of hate that shit. Yeah. Yeah, that stuff can piss off. I don't like that nonsense. I considered it a good omen that it's the year of the rabbit and we're getting the finale of Sailor Moon this year. I did not realize Sailor Moon was still running. Wow. Okay. That is news to me. All right. Won't the stream get demonetized if I sing? If I sing too much, it will. Sure. Who's a better writer, Ian Banks or Terry Pratchett? They're two of my faves, even though I prefer Banks. That. My brain won't process that comparison because they are so fundamentally different as writers in terms of the narrative voice that they're going for. They both nail what they're trying to do, but I can't even think of how to start to compare them. I feel like they both succeed in what they're aiming for so well that I think it largely comes down to a matter of personal preference. Preferentially, I'm going to favor Pratchett a little, but that's partially because Pratchett reminds me of Douglas Adams, and Douglas Adams might be my favorite writer ever. So, I don't know. That's a difficult comparison, though. Dead End deserved better. It did. At least the graphic novels are getting a re-release later this year, and so we can read what probably would have been the premise for more seasons if it had gotten it, which, it's cold comfort, but sometimes you take what you can. Oh, and heart for you, John Vinyls. Thank you very much. Aaron, thank you. Quite generous. I really appreciate that. Just popping in to say hi. Sorry I'm missing things. Been working since I got home from work. No end in sight. Blarg! Hey, all. Well, thank you for stopping in, Aaron, and thank you for the super chat. I greatly appreciate it. Just want to say sorry to hear about you and Liz. Wishing both of you the best. Thank you. Thank you. I'm hoping for the best for both of us too. I wonder how many people's negative views of capitalism came from the character of Moneybags in the Spyro games. I never played them, so had no impact on mine, certainly. I felt bad for the squirrel who saved Arthur's life in the movie. Yeah, she kind of got a bum deal. I said both perfectly. Oh, yay! Go me. I did not get any images of Shudigatwa in a pink beanie, but a lot of people are searching it. As soon as I type 15th Doctor, top suggestion was 15th Doctor pink beanie. Good grief. Got to go for lunch. Well, thank you for stopping in. Always good to see you. Discord. Yes, I will get to that in one moment, Carolyn. Question, have you ever heard of Angel's Egg? In the aftermath, it is widely considered the worst anime adaptation, worse than Dragon Ball Evolution and Netflix Bebop. I have not heard of either the original or the adaptation. Oh, well. Popping over to the Discord to address questions there from Patreon supporters. So if you ever want to take part and get questions in early over there, that is how you can do so. The Discord is a Patreon exclusive perk. I will get through these as quickly as I can. Here we go. If you lived in the UK, how would you feel about having to pay the license fee? I've heard some people, most of them queer, say they're going to stop paying the license fee to protest the BBC being transphobic. Maybe it's not my place to have a say on this. I'm cishet, but I personally think that would be like saying it's okay not to pay your taxes to protest the government. So I don't know. I would be incredibly torn on that because I actually do believe in the value of a publicly funded network like the BBC, but I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know what I would do in that situation. I would be incredibly torn because it would be a case of something that I believe in the principle of stabbing me in the back. I mean, much more so than is already the case. So I don't have a firm answer. One of the culture books you've not read has a non-sequential chapter order that can make it hard to get through. When Banks originally wrote it in the 1970s, it apparently had an even more confusing structure. I think he had the idea that the most climactic chapters would be in the middle and the least climactic would be at the start and end. So basically, the end of the story would be in the middle of the book and the early parts would be at the start and the end of the book. Banks shows the manuscript to another writer who told him it was terrible, so he shelved it until the early 90s when he rewrote it in a way that's actually readable. Do you think any writer, i.e. anyone who's not an unpublished 20-year-old, could make something like that actually work? Like just based on that description, could you imagine a book with a structure actually enjoyable to read? Yes, but you would have to very specifically build the narrative around the fact that that's how you're doing it. I think if you just had a narrative, had a story that initially just lays out in a standard progression and just tried to shuffle the order of events, that will never work. If you built the story from the ground up with the anticipation of doing it in that format, so that you even knowing that that's how you're doing it, you are building the story in a way that makes that easier to transition through and maybe has themes that will resonate with the idea that it is climaxing in the middle. I don't know what those themes would be, but those sorts of things possible. Incredibly difficult to the point that I would think in most cases probably not worth the effort, but possible. In your video about Hogwarts Legacy, you were critical of yourself for buying clothes that were made in sweatshops. Don't you think that's a bit different since clothes are an essential, whereas video games are not? Like there's a different degree of sacrifice? Oh yeah, of course. It's not a one-to-one. And for clarity, folks, that is a video that is actually not out yet. That will be out Saturday. But again, Patreon supporters get early access. Yeah, no, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's just a way to illustrate that at this point, global capitalism has tainted everything. So you'll note I also make the comparison, to the various toys on the shelf. None of those are essentials, so that's probably a cleaner comparison. Oscars schmoskers, Everything Everywhere is the most nominated. Do you think it can win any major categories? I think Ke Huy Quan might be the best shot in the Big Five. I think he's got a shot. I think Michelle Yeoh has a shot. I think the directors might win. I'll be more surprised if the movie does. It might be a case where the directors win, but the movie doesn't, which doesn't happen super often, but happens more often in the last 20 years than it used to. Oscars Schmoskers Part 2. Till and, for example, Selma previously are largely ignored. Is the Academy scared to even highlight films that focus on the civil rights era from an African-American perspective? Yes, but it's not as orchestrated as that. It's not like they're collectively holding meetings and going, we're not okay with this. It's just a matter of the Academy itself being not as diverse as it should be, having too many members that are frankly old, a little bit like U.S. government sort of thing, and being stuck in an old way of doing things and not open to different ways of doing things. And sometimes stuff breaks through, and oftentimes I get the feeling with the Oscars that they'll have some things break through and they'll think, and there's our awesome diversity stuff, and we don't have to think about all the rest, is the impression I get sometimes. Given the maxim of no taxation without representation is meant to be so much part of American history and identity, why is non-citizen voting in local elections not more common in the U.S. as it is pretty usual for local type elections in much of Europe and the U.K.? Inspired by reading about this being upheld in Montpelier. So non-citizen voting gets to be a very dicey subject very quickly, and it varies wildly from state to state. And part of it has to do, first of all, it's worth pointing out, non-citizen does not mean in the country illegally. There are plenty of residential non-citizens here legally, in addition to migrants most of whom are were originally here on legal means that expired or what have you. It gets dicey, especially these days with the right getting as up in arms about integrity of the vote, which is a smokescreen for we want to control who gets to actually vote. The thing is, like most things in the U.S., it is montric to the degree that it doesn't actually get examined. In the same way that all men are created equal is montric but doesn't get examined, in the same way as liberty and justice for all is montric but doesn't actually get examined. People just say it as if it's true. and leave it at that. How was the burlesque event over the weekend? It was good. It was draining. I took one class. I took a floor work class. I actually bought knee pads specifically to be able to do that class. That was fun. I would like to integrate more floor work into some of my numbers. Floor work is so hot. It's like, oh, so many numbers that I've seen that just left me going, have incorporated or been primarily floor work. Oh, God. Whew. What would be a good method of looking up local to us burlesque events? Depends where you are, I suppose. I mean, just start by looking up in your state, burlesque in whatever the state is. Figure out where the pockets of it are. Like in Vermont, it's mostly in Burlington with a couple of outliers. And then start following those organizations and or venues on social media and see when things are scheduled for. That's probably the best way to start. Have you ever heard of the comic Atomic Robo? I have. I've never read it, though. It's a comic series that follows the titular Atomic Robo, a snarky robot made by Nikola Tesla, of course, who runs a company and has adventures across the decades from the time of his creation to present day. It's basically a sci-fi version of Hellboy, just replace witchcraft and folklore enemies with super science. The creator described the tone as taking the Indiana Jones style of archaeology and applying that to every field of science. So you've got physicists punching out terrorists. Plus, one of the villains is the ghost of Thomas Edison, so that's just great. I have heard of Atomic Robo. I have some friends who swear by it. I have never read it. Apparently, Finn Jones wants to get another crack at Iron Fist. Ugh. Like, I feel bad, and I get that the script was bad, and that the shooting was bad, and, like, nothing about that show was good, but, like, dude, you weren't good in the part. Like, I would have been okay with Thomas Jane getting another crack at the Punisher because, well, I actually don't even think that movie's all that bad. It's just not a great representation of the character. But he was still decent in it. Like, Finn Jones was just not good in the part. He just wasn't. He wasn't. While the Iron Fist show had numerous problems, I honestly thought Finn Jones was a good pick for Danny Rand. I thought he was insufferable. I kind of hated him. He was an annoying little prick. And I get that's actually meant to be part of the character, but he couldn't balance it with any charm to make him like an enjoyable prick. Like, Tony Stark's an enjoyable prick. Danny Rand was not. Danny Rand was insufferable. And yes, a lot of that wasn't Finn Jones's fault, but no part of any of what I saw from him made me think he was elevating the material. Made me think that he was bringing anything to it. Like, I had a fair amount of problems with the Luke Cage seasons as well. There were a lot I didn't like about either of them. I would still love for him to come back and play Luke Cage again because he was real good in the part. Finn Jones just wasn't. He wasn't. I'm sorry. He wasn't. I don't think so. That having been said, if he's given another chance, I'll give him a shot. And I would love to be proven wrong about that. I would love to be wrong. If it was my decision, I would move on to somebody else. Honestly, if it was my decision, I'd just pick up with Colleen Wing and abandon Danny completely. She's a more interesting character regardless, but whatever. With John Kent, Superman's son who's been aged up to 17, being bisexual, would you say he would be more impactful if he was still 10 years old? I've seen plenty of people say that the aging up should stick. However, I feel like him going back to his original age of 10 would be better on that front since there is a strong lack of showcasing innocent crushes and puppy love for younger males and showing the wholesomeness that can be found there. It might just be me, but I've noticed for a long time that same-sex female relationships are the ones being showcased more. While I think a win is a win, it would be nice to see more from a male mask presenting side of things. I get what you're saying. My own personal opinion is to kind of run hard the other way, which is that I don't think we should be delving into the sexuality of any 10-year-olds in most of our media. I think that is done way too damn much. I think the codification of, oh, the childhood crush, regardless of who it is exhausting and kind of gross. Like, and I mean that with heterosexual, like, I see things with frickin' 10-year-old characters in, whether it's a cartoon or it's live action, like getting all these little giggly crushes on somebody. I don't care who it is. I find it off-putting. I just don't like it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I would scrap most of it. But having said that, at the same time, I do recognize that it is an age where crushes actually do start to form. And I can't actually, other than my own personal tastes, make a core argument as to why we shouldn't have it at all. And if it is going to exist for straight crushes, it should exist for same-sex crushes and anything else on the queer spectrum. And I do agree with you, at least my own general sense is that by and large, especially in any media aimed at a younger audience, girl-on-girl crushing is appears to be more acceptable. There are exceptions, and even some fairly recently, like with Disney's Strange Worlds, although, again, admittedly, he was in his later teens. I don't know if they established his actual age. But yeah, I'm kind of the opinion I don't really want to see 10-year-olds crushing on anybody, but if you're going to do it, a more even spread would be nice. Okay, I'm now back to the main chat. I'm out of the Discord. Let's catch up. John Vinyls, thank you very much for the super chat. What makes the Oscars frustrating is they're often the only chance a lot of international films have to break through in the US. That is frustratingly true. Yeah, that it would be nice if it was a cleaner thing of like they definitely get more notice, and to some degree they do, but this is partially this is partially a U.S. problem, but this is also partially the U.S. also exports a lot of its entertainment. It's the core of a lot of the biggest entertainment in the entire world. So yeah, we tend to focus on what we produce, which is unfortunate. And that is just kind of reflective of a U.S. mentality in general. Trig from Ireland, thank you very much for the super chat. Is being quote-unquote terminally online actually a bad thing? Media criticism for social media has a certain tone to it that I sometimes find unsettling. So the way in which your question is kind of cyclical, because you're saying, is being terminally online actually a bad thing? Whereas sort of by its nature, that specific term is generally used to indicate the times when being online has gotten to the point of becoming a bad thing. Therefore, you use that term. But does that necessarily mean that anyone who spends a lot of time online, is it a bad thing? Hopefully, ideally, in that situation, you wouldn't use the phrase terminally online. It can turn into an argument over pedantic definitions. And I don't think that there is an inherent wickedness or detriment to having a significantly online existence. I do think for most people, it is a good idea to maintain real world touch points. I say that while recognizing that for some people, be it some people with certain physical limitations, be it some people with certain neurodivergencies, be it some people just in situations where they're not in a safe physical environment, and online spaces are just going to be better for them than the real world situation they're actually in. I understand that there are exceptions for all those reasons. I do feel that when the term comes up, it usually, at least in the times I've seen it, is in reference to the pretty specific stripe of online life that comes in the form of people who would have more touch points in their life if they allowed that to happen, but they are cutting things off in order to be more online. I do think that there is excuse me, there's a difference between just building a very online existence for yourself and, just as a thing to do and be, and cutting off other ways of interacting with people in order to do that. And it's the latter that I feel like that term is usually in reference to. Obviously, this is not meant for every instance that the reference is used, but it's a phrase you see very often in reference to far right spaces. The alt-right is frequently referred to as being terminally online, and there are reasons for that, because they are so insulated and insular in their interactions that they use what basically feels like a foreign language of inside terminology, abbreviations, and meme references to communicate with each other that is impenetrable to anybody from the outside. So there's that aspect. And then also somewhat specific to the far right is the idea of they are often encouraged to disassociate from making real world connections, because real world connections would put a lie to a lot of the stuff that they're being fed, the things they're supposed to hate and the things that they're meant to support. And I would caution anyone applying the phrase terminally online outside of that specific bubble. I'm not going to say it can't have use outside of that, but I feel like the term came into heavy use to refer to that specific subculture, and I do think it is pretty fairly applied there. It's not a phrase I'd want to see proliferated too far outside of that, of referencing that particular media, internalized media bubble, because it starts to lose the meaning of what it was actually referring to, if that makes sense. All right, I'm going to try and catch up on the super chats, and we are going to wrap it up soon. Can Panic at the Disco technically be a band if they only consist of one guy? Yeah, sure. I consider Harry Nilsson a band. He was one guy. Supreme Omega. I wonder why adaptations are uncomfortable at using Oracle compared how much they adapt Nightwing. Is it because of issues surrounding the Killing Joke? Possibly. I think now part of it is that Oracle just is no longer the case. I think where it was particularly noticeable was back in the years before the New 52, when that's who Barbara was, and none of the adaptations would cover getting up to that point, even if you choose to skip over the actual events that caused her to be in a wheelchair. A lot of use could have still been made of her and wasn't. These days, I suspect they just use the excuse of like, well, I mean, she's not in it now, so we're just referencing the more current. But they seem very happy to have the excuse to not deal with it. I think there's a discomfort with atypical periods for these characters, and a lot of adaptations tend to avoid them. 255 AD. Thank you very much for the super chat there. That question about Young Banks, how do you handle telling a young writer you think this is clever, but I'm reading it as incomprehensible nonsense? I mean, it would be incredibly dependent on what kind of relationship I had to that person, and ideally I would know how to communicate so that person would best hear it. but basically kind of just what you said. Like, I see what you did structure-wise, and that's really interesting. What purpose does it serve? Why did you structure it like this? Would probably be where I start before just leaping into saying it's incomprehensible nonsense. Because I feel like I would have to try and parse what was the actual goal in doing that. Was there something you were trying to accomplish? Because if I could understand that, other than just, I think it's a neat way to tell a story, at that point I would go, okay, it's an incoherent way. Nice try, it doesn't work. But if they actually had a goal they were attaining for, then maybe I'd be able to say, okay, I don't think this accomplishes that goal. Maybe have you considered this or that or something else? Again, it'd be probably very situational. Where are we? Scully made me gay. Oh, bless Agent Scully. Yep. I think she did that for a lot of people, Meg. As Carolyn points out, valid. Trig, thank you once again for the super chat. I very much appreciate your thoughtful answer to my somewhat off-topic question. Thank you. Of course. It's pretty rare that I don't have some thoughts unless somebody asks me an opinion on something that I don't know about. But, you know, a rambling brain will wind it up and watch it go. But anyways, I think we are going to wrap it up. I have filming to do and some stuff to get done. Oh, John Vinyl sneaking in at the last minute. Thank you very much. I would love to have Rain Whispers at my wedding. I bet they would make an awesome accompanist for the ceremony itself or for the reception. So yes, stuff coming up. Tomorrow will be the latest Take 2 Doctor Who review. This one will be on The Haunting of Villa Diodati, and I have a feeling I'm going to tick some people off with that one. We'll see. After that, I'll also be streaming on Twitch tomorrow morning, and also Friday. Tomorrow I'm probably going to wrap up playing Lost in Play. After that, I don't know. I've got a number of options. I got to figure that out. Karen, we need to talk about that. We need to sort that. And then Saturday's video is on a lot of stuff, but it is essentially talking about the notion of hollow allyship. People who say with their words, I support, trans people or whatnot, but then through their actions will not actually take a stand. So that's the primary focus of the conversation. Unfortunately, yet again, filtered through the lens of at least touching on J.K. Rowling. I'm so sick of it. I'll be really happy when that damn game comes out and people will hopefully talk a bit less about her. I feel like Hogwarts Legacy coming out has really, really kicked the beehive on this. Eternal Sailor Earth. Thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that very much. A more manga-faithful remake called Sailor Moon Crystal was released starting in 2014. The anime adaptation of the 5th and final arc of the manga comes out in June under the name Sailor Moon Cosmos. Interesting. I have not ever really seen all that much of Sailor Moon. I've seen bits and pieces. Like I get when people reference it, I get what they're referencing. I have not seen much of it. I do have to admit. Oh, is this the front? Yes, Aongus. It is the one that sort of starts by talking about Stephen Fry. How do you feel about Vosh saying it's okay to buy the game? I do not give two craps what Vosh thinks about literally anything. And that's not even me disagreeing with him. I don't care what his opinion is. I don't. I do not. I do not care what it is, nor do I have a rebuttal to it. I don't care. I have no interest in his opinion. Somebody tried to link his well, no, somebody did. I let it through. Somebody linked his video to my short that I put up earlier today. I'm not going to watch it. I don't care what he thinks. I really, really don't. If you want to boil down his argument and regurgitate it as your own, maybe if I'm in a good mood, I'll deal with that. I'm not watching that. I do not care what he thinks. So, there we go. Anyways, something wrong with Vosh? I have no interest in him. Like, that's it. That's it. Plenty of people have problems with him. Some people do, some people don't. Some people defend him, some people do. I don't care. I aggressively do not care. Anyways, that's it. That's it. We're wrapping it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Thank you for the support. Thank you for listening to my rambling nonsense. Thank you for being here. Just thank you. I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of the week. And I hope that you just are well. I hope that you be well, you be safe, and you be kind, because you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. McCavity!